All right, BlackRock, of course, is getting into a little bit more of Bitcoin, and they are diving in a little deeper, I think, than maybe everybody has been anticipating. We'll break it down for you guys. It's going to be a good one. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. A couple of things I want to hit on is the strategies that institutional capital is taking. And one of the strategies that they're approaching, remember who the Bitcoin ETF really is for. And that is not people like you and I, if you're watching this, but maybe for you who are a first-time joiner on our channel. This, of course, was an ad by BlackRock that was out there. I'm not going to play the ad, but you can kind of see it's a fairly benign ad, typical talking head. But remember that the people they're trying to really swoon in is people that are and like very safe investments. So boring, I will say in a bad way, but people that are just really looking at this not necessarily as a high risk investment. So that I think is a good strategy when you think about what they're trying to do as a bigger picture. And that in itself also leans in a little bit to what they're doing in terms of their print advertising and their digital advertising. So introducing iBit right there, another good example of that. Then you have others in the market that are going even more aggressive out there. This, of course, was Times Square, and that's Valkyrie with their Burr. I love that call tag for sure. But anyway, this is Valkyrie. So again, just shows more efforts from traditional finance going after advertising as a whole on the Bitcoin ETF. Then you look at BlackRock themselves starting to position within Bitcoin overall. A couple of things that they're focusing here on this article, 2 days into the trading of spot. BlackRock, of course, largest asset manager, grabs another 11,500 in Bitcoin, places the firm among the top 15 public holders of Bitcoin, accounting for roughly about a 0.056 of the total Bitcoin supply. I think that's a pretty bold move, by BlackRock, but I think it also is kind of a walking the walk scenario where they're positioning for their clients. And this could be something that also shows maybe the future signs of where this ETF could be going. Firm is leveraging aesthetic and linguistic strategies to appeal to a broad audience. And the light color scheme coupled with, purchases like Bitcoin Access Made Easy and ETF reflects a very simple way to get people into it. And again, I think this is just going back to that very basic of advertising. And, when you're trying to sell something that is complicated, the number one strategy and way to do that is to make it simple. And I think that's one of the things they've been able to do. Further into this, if you look at the institutional investors and private companies that are in, let me kind of zoom in on that a little bit, that are in deep on Bitcoin, Grayscale, of course, kind of topping the list right there. BlackRock, if you add this, remember, this is not updated. So the 11,500 is going to add to this number. This was done back in late last year. And then you got Block One in here, Tezos, Galaxy Digital Holding, Marathon, of course, a miner, Tether, MicroStrategy is, of course, one of the biggest out there, and then even Mt. Gox. So that's kind of putting BlackRock in the mix around some of the biggest holders of Bitcoin in recent times. So that to me shows, again, just more faith in the overall system. Let's not forget, too, that the U.S. government still one of the largest known holders of Bitcoin, around 200,000 of those out there right now on Bitcoin. I want to play a couple of clips for you. One, of course, is Raul Paul talking about the ETF itself and what that adoption cycle might look like. Listen in.
It's going to attract people because the markets have been strong. Last year, Bitcoin itself was 160%, right? That doesn't go unnoticed, considering even the NASDAQ managed 50%. So it's like 3x the NASDAQ. But let's start with the RIAs, the investment advisors and the financial advisors. Those guys aren't on Twitter. They have no idea what any of this is going on. All the drama that played out and the false tweet and all of that shit, that total goat rodeo, I don't know any of this. The first they will hear about this is when they pick up Barron's on Saturday morning with a cup of coffee. And they'll go, oh, a Bitcoin ETF. And Barron's will probably have some cynicism in the article, let's assume. And they're like, well, that's interesting, but I'm not sure it's for my clients. And they go about their business, and then they go and see Jack, their big client, on the golf course that weekend. And Jack says, hey, what do you think of the Bitcoin ETF? And the RIA will repeat what he read in Barron's and what he saw on Fox News. And then maybe next week, he starts reading a few more articles and a few more positive things come out. Then he starts thinking, maybe I should do something about this. And a couple of other clients ask him. And before you know it, he starts building an order book and getting his clients in. He can see they're interested. He's incentivized by the sales process and the commissions. And before you know it, he's mobilized. It's the same with all the RIAs.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Raoul Pal, he's been in Wall Street and around investment capital for a long time. And if you compare that to even some things I talked about last week and just number of investment advisors that I kind of hang with and them asking about it. And it is much like the cycle he just mentioned there. It's a very slow process, so I do think he is right. I think this is one of those things that will lead up. But further into this, I want to go to another clip. This is talking about Mircostrategy and their angle, because is this better than an ETF by just going in and hedging into a regular IPO, a regular stock? Listen in.
But I think there's actually something out there that's already exposed to Bitcoin, which we've owned for quite a while, which is actually better than a Bitcoin ETF, and that is Mircostrategy. Mircostrategy is better than, in my assessment at least, is better than a Bitcoin ETF for a couple reasons. Number one, it's more liquid. So it's the largest owner of Bitcoin in the world. Not only that, there's no fees attached to it. And so you think about the optionality of owning a new technological asset and being the largest owner of that asset. It provides enormous optionality over the long term. Not only that, you've got a CEO who owns $1 billion worth of stock, who owns $750 million worth of Bitcoin personally. He's a technologist. He's got 31 patents to his name, so he gets it. So, we can talk about the ETFs, but there's already something that's more liquid out there already, and it's really interesting to consider that. If the value deviates from the intrinsic value, so if the price goes above intrinsic value, Michael can sell more shares into the open market and use that cash to buy Bitcoin. That's an enormously value accretive thing to do. If you think about the history of fiat currencies, always debasing themselves, right? And then you've got something whose supply, Bitcoin, is completely independent of the demand for it. That's a very value accretive thing to do, is sell something in dollars and buy something in Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I think this analyst, he's kind of hitting on the point that Raul is even making, is even when you do support an ecosystem like MicroStrategy, that's a direct relationship. That's going to equate in more Bitcoin acquisition, obviously being led by Michael Saylor. So I think that's definitely in the spot. Kevin O'Leary had some interesting things to say. Remember, Kevin was also on last week on our show in a clip that he said this would never happen. And, go over here because it's, you understand. Kevin has agendas. But I want to play this clip. Listen to what he had to say here.
Now, if you're a purist and you're just holding Bitcoin for the long term as a digital gold, as I am, I would never buy an ETF. Why would I pay these fees? It's completely unnecessary and they add no value to me. The great news is, in this event, is it shows a march forward on regulation towards cryptocurrencies. In addition, I would hope this re-energizes Congress to look at digital payment systems like tokens around USDC, for example, which is based on the US dollar as a payment system. That has been out there. The Stablecoin Act has been kind of delayed, but now we have this momentous occasion, which is great, but we're way early. We're in the first inning. And regarding 11 of these ETFs, not a chance they all survive. You should be watching AUM, assets under management. Maybe 2 or 3 will win. I would bet that behemoths like Fidelity and BlackRock end up on top because they have massive sales forces. But if institutions don't care about this, they don't care because they would never buy an ETF. They'd never pay the fees. The great news is that it's a signal to them, and particularly sovereign wealth, which I deal with. They like this development. This is a good thing for them to eventually get into crypto, that the SEC has finally approved this.
All right, so a few things that Kevin, I don't often agree with him, but a few things he did say in terms of things that will apply. Obviously, this not being for the crypto natives and even people who want to be directly exposed to Bitcoin, because there's so many ways in without the fees. So that I agree. I also think that we will see a pairing of the crowd in terms of the best ETFs to choose out there. Most likely BlackRock and a handful of others will be, kind of those chosen few. And the bigger picture, of course, is the opportunity from the regulation front. So I would agree with him on that as well. But looking out across the bow, you have to look at the potential here for these assets under management to actually make a way into Bitcoin. So it does have, back to what Raul said, is that there is a longer lead time here that I think plays out for sure. Now, Always remember, though, that the big problem that you have typically in acquiring Bitcoin is this whole trading cycle. And of course, if you want to get into something that can trade like Bitcoin, you can do that with iTrust Capital, one of our sponsors. So make sure and use the link down below. Like if you were going out when New York Stock Exchange closed today for a holiday, BlackRock closed today, Grayscale, Fidelity, all closed, but you can go out on iTrust Capital and of course, buy and sell right there on and within. And this is where you get to manage it on your own. And that's another advantage, I think, in terms of people who are looking at especially a crypto IRA. So check it out. Use our link down below to get a $100 funding reward. And hopefully you guys can kind of set your course in motion. Other things that I thought were kind of a little bit hypocritical was the move that Vanguard has taken. Because remember, Vanguard's pretty much the competitor to BlackRock. This is Vanguard's CEO, and there's some interesting statements here. First, I want you to know his body language. He's got his arms crossed. He's like very close to this whole situation. But listen to what he had to say about owning Bitcoin.
Of ETFs. And there's been a lot of discussion over the past few weeks about potentially a Bitcoin or cryptocurrency ETFs. Are you exploring it? Do you plan to open one? Are you going to apply to open one? And what do you think of a Bitcoin ETF as an investment tool for your customers?
Tyler, we won't be pursuing a Bitcoin ETF. Just like we don't use gold as an asset class for our clients. So it's not that people can't invest in there. We just look at asset classes for, what belongs in a long-term portfolio, what has intrinsic value, has cash flows to it. And those are the asset classes we steer people towards. And so we don't go towards Bitcoin or gold or any other of those stable assets.
All right, so a couple of things he hit on there is he's shying away from gold. This could lean toward maybe more innovative things that Vanguard would do. Think ETH ETF. I mean, there's some opportunities there. But if you look at some of the breakdowns of Vanguard, this, of course, by Gerbox here, he kind of breaks down the amount of MicroStrategy that they own. They're the second largest of all holders. So saying they're not buying Bitcoin is kind of ironic because they are holding so much in the way of MicroStrategy, which is a direct hedge on the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I don't know. It's just a very, I think it's a little bit of hypocrisy here. I think in the terms of just theirs, I think it all goes back to BlackRock beat them to the punch here, and they just don't want to be a Johnny-come-lately, is what it boils down to. Because Wall Street's very egotistical like that. SEC is unlikely to approve a spot ETH ETF. Now, this is some people looking at a few scenarios that would play out here that could push a spot Bitcoin, or ETH ETF way out. And I don't know, I'd love to get your opinion. Do you guys think that an ETH ETF has a better opportunity? Because remember, May has been a potential date in which this would occur, because that's the first date that the SEC would have to finalize a potential there. A couple of things they mentioned in the article. Expectation is that the agency will not be approving the ETH ETF for crypto tokens anytime soon. We believe the SEC will want to gain experience from Bitcoin. We'll see. The wait might not be as long as 26 months, but would likely be after the election. That's a rough one. I think this will come before the election. This is JP Morgan aren't bidding big on this. In our opinion, the SEC has to approve a spot ETH ETF in May. It would necessarily classify Ethereum as a commodity rather than a security. That's the other thing that has kind of been interesting when you ask, or when people ask Gary Gensler, what is ETH? And he's so reluctant to say. So there are some potential indicators there. And he wouldn't, this being JP Morgan, wouldn't put more than a 50% chance to the SEC classifying ETH as a commodity before May. And remember, May is that first date. So a couple of things. I'd love to still get your opinion on this. Even though Gensler did approve the spot Bitcoin, federal court gave the agency little choice to approve those funds. As he hadn't lost a legal battle brought against it by Grayscale, this wouldn't have happened. So could Grayscale actually be the one that maybe pushes the ball forward here? That's a very interesting situation. Further into this says the approval also does not expect the schedule for crypto market structure legislation. This was coming back from T.D. Cohen. I think that is true to a certain extent, because 24 will be a tough year to get much through in the way of legislation. Still a challenge, even though I do think stablecoins probably got the best bet. Gensler's term ends in 2026, so it's yet another reason we believe Gensler is no hurry to act. I think the court will shift that idea a bit, and most likely will be putting the SEC on notice again. If you look, though, at ETH overall, the narrative is still pointing toward a potential ETF. Here's a good example. This is a percentage of ETH supply in profit on just the 7-day. So all doing well, pretty much. You go over to Nansen, you can kind of see just the movement of ETH overall. But as you follow along here, total lock, that's that purple line right here, if you're following along here. And you can see it's just continuing to climb. And then if you look at the total average right here, around 2,000, even with that as an average, ETH's kind of hovering in that 22, 23, 24 range right now. Sure, it's been shooting up. But the fact that we've got so much, conviction in what the ETH ecosystem is doing, that people are going this far in on staking, that only to me is a very, very bullish potential for where ETH is going. Now, with that, there's always a negative, and you're going to get both positive, negative stories. So there was a negative and there was a positive scenario around this. Then you look at this right here, which is talking about Celsius's potential sale around 125 million of Ethereum. So if that were to happen, and remember, they still have like 1.4 billion, 540,000 in ETH remaining. So could this be timed out over time? Sure, it could be, but it could be done in a time in which ETH is moving up the chart in terms of positive, performance. So again, still, you're going to get these kind of narratives coming in. So you have to kind of look at this from a bigger picture, and you have to think long term. And I think that's the other thing that many people are considering right now is how long should you look at? Is 24 going to be the year that we see an all-time high for both Bitcoin and Ethereum, or does it roll into 2025? All of this timed around a Bitcoin halving, an election. I think we have some big times ahead of us. So just, stick around for that. Listen into what Raoul Pal had to say, because he kind of hits it in the sense that this is maybe a shot you don't want to miss. Listen in.
And there's only two assets that outperform the debasement of currency. And I've talked about this ad infinitum. And that is technology stocks and crypto. And crypto is the fastest horse in the race. And now, why don't fuck this up is because neither of those two assets are particularly easy to own because they're volatile. They want and people hate them. People whisper in your ear all day long. They mock you on Twitter. They tell you you're stupid. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. Buy my value investing stock. You should buy the Russell 2000. You should diversify, my friend. And meanwhile, we've got probably 2 cycles less. This is your chance, and these are the only chances we're going to get.
I would agree with Raoul. I think as people just get, kind of caught up in all the rhetoric that happens on Twitter and within your own ecosystems of friends, family, etc. So anyway, hopefully this is going to help you guys stay with it. If you're not in the Diamond Circle, make sure and jump in. It's a great place to get additional alpha and more, content, podcasts, etc. research we do over there. So make sure and click the link down below. You can, of course, join that. And if you guys want to catch me out there on X, it's just @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.